This truly has been one of the most stressful moments in my life so far, as well as my family. But little did we know there was a blessing waiting for us on the horizon. It's been a long time. For those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Daniel Blank and welcome to DB Studios, where we do a series of tutorials with various design programs from Photoshop to architectural program, graphic design programs, and even some photography. And the goal is to inspire other people to use programs and see these things in ways they probably normally wouldn't have utilized them in their everyday lives. So this is the fourth video in the mini series where I shared some things that I've went through over the last year and even today. And there's honestly so much to cover and I want to go straight into it. Honestly, I'm going to say this, so many things have happened, but in order to keep everything concise, I'm just going to have to summarize some of these main points. So yes. Recently, my family and we were almost homeless, and it's very traumatizing how everything has happened, and even the after effects. I'm still feeling it, my mother is feeling it, my sister is feeling it. And before I get into this is just such a serious subject. I just wanted to first talk about some resources that are available. So if you or anyone you know are at risk of becoming homeless or are facing some issues paying bills, etc., please share some of these resources, which I'll also add in a description, and I'll go over what these resources are at the end of this video as well. So this is for New York State. So please visit this website, otda.ny.gov/programs/housing. You'll find a plethora of resources for people who are facing homelessness or people who are already homeless and on the streets, unfortunately. So contact your local social service department and then see what they can do on your area. There should be a hyperlink. You can click there and you can navigate based on what region you're living in New York. The next thing you can do is call 311. And when you call 311, ask for the Department of Homeless Services. So that's DHS. And they can begin to run through what some of your options could be depending on your situation. The second thing you can do is search for housing services based on your region. So this will be the hyperlink towards the bottom. And in here you'll see about 7 different services that you can go into. Some of them, for example, are emergency needs for the homeless program, and also New York State supportive housing program, and even solutions to end homelessness program. So please go through all these resources and navigate what best suit your needs, or share it with someone you know who may be in this situation. So all of this started on December 2nd, 2020. I found out around 7 p.m. from my mother. My mother came and told me that the landlord said he sold the private house. So if some of you don't know what a private house is, it's not quite like an apartment, or it's not like your average 2-story house. So think of it as a multi-story house or a multi-family house that's divided into several levels. So there's a basement, first floor, second floor, and a third floor. So it's, you can say, a 3-family home, or we can perhaps even say 4-family, because where we were staying at that time was the basement, and we've been in the basement for 10 years. So I'm actually going to have to give you all a little bit of a backstory and a little bit of context so you can understand the situation in of itself. So we have been living there for 10 years in the basement, and so I have to also say this, the landlord is someone, let's just say someone really close to the family, we'll say that. Unfortunately, a little bit more than 10 years ago, we ended up in a situation where we just couldn't pay rent. Had a lot to do with the 2008 recession, and my father lost his job, and not too long later my mother did as well, and we ended up there. And we honestly, being there was a miracle in of itself. And I have to honestly say, thank God that we were even there, because truly, we find out later on that the landlord really, really didn't want us there. So while we were living there, many of our rights were violated. And we basically so basically the landlord will come inside where we live at any time he wanted. So whether it was early in the morning, late afternoon, and he would come unannounced. And he's like, I own the place. If you don't like it, you can get out, right? And that was really his attitude. He, you know, more often than not, he would show up without letting us know in advance, you know. And I actually spoke to someone who worked in real estate, and they were running by me some of like the rules and regulations between tenants and landlords. And apparently a landlord can come into your apartment only under emergencies, only under certain conditions. They cannot come at any time like that. That's actually violating the law. But what were we going to say? You know, our family and I, you know, we really had nothing else. We had nowhere to go. And, you know, there were times where he sent other people, you know, people who were going to come and do repairs, for example. Instead of coming through the backyard into the back door, he sent them through this staircase. There's a staircase that runs to all the levels. He sent them into the staircase and they came directly into our living room just like that. And it was just so, it was stressful, you know. There were some times my sister, she was just changing and someone would just walk into the house. And one thing she told me, and this happened more than once, and it traumatized her. She was the only one home. All the lights were off. And let me tell you something, in that basement, when you turn off all the lights, it is pitch black in there. Because there's only 2 windows, one in the kitchen and one in the other is in the bedroom that's adjacent from the kitchen. So basically what happened was that it's dark, and then she just hears like someone coming inside, right? There's many instances this happened, and you know, she's looking and she just sees a figure standing in the dark. She thought it was an intruder, a burglar, but it was one of his relatives that he just sends in, and they come in without permission, without telling us. So that it's been very, very hard on all of us. The next thing is that the conditions we lived in were very, very inhumane. There was no repairs that were done, nothing that was done to address the mold. We lived in a place that had black mold, yes. And I'm actually going to show you a video in about a couple of seconds. But we lived there for 10 years, and by the grace of God, none of us contracted asthma. So listen, I'll say this first. I don't know exactly what some of your beliefs are, what you believe in, but I just want to share this story. I just feel really inspired to share what happened with each of us. And I'm hoping by the end of it, it encourages some of you. So we really believed it was a miracle by God that honestly nothing happened to any of us. And indeed it was, because you know, even from our physical health, you know, a lot of people just being within mold for a few days, like that can really cause some serious health conditions. So I'm actually going to show you right now, and I have my phone right here. I'm actually going to go through some videos. So I got a couple of videos, and we're looking here. That's basically how most of the wall look in the house. And yeah, it's just very, very dirty. Going on to the next video, that's one of the closets, right? And in the closet, you know, this actually, let me pause it right about here, right? This actually happened because water actually came inside, and the water damaged everything. And, you know, a lot of our possessions got damaged. So the place constantly got flooded. And, you know, the water is what's causing all this mold buildup. And just to show you another video now, I think this one's a little bit more extensive, I believe. So I'm walking through it, and I'll take a look at the kitchen. The whole counter, that little island collapsed on the floor. That's how the mold looked. and it's really bad. It's really bad. And look, there was a flood that came in that blew out all the counters under the sink, the kitchen sink. And I'm telling you, it's just, let's just walk through it. And yeah, even from above, it just damaged everything, and nothing was ever done to, repair this. And that's basically been our living condition. Now I'm just gonna fast forward it a little bit because a lot of that. So I'm walking right now towards the other room, right? And this room was so bad, no windows. The humidifier in this room is broken, and then, for this reason, it was just really impossible for anyone to live in this room. And you can just see the mold everywhere. You see the black mold that was there, and there was always the option of painting and, doing it ourselves. But this is the job that the landlord has to do, This is the job of the landlord. But on top of that, it's just the fact that the place has been so damaged. Now look, I'm next to the bathroom. You see that? Look at that. Look, this was no joke, right? This was no joke. And I'm just gonna fast forward a little bit, but that's the idea, right? And you can even see that in the bathroom. And even everything was just in bad condition. And that's really what was our living condition that we were living in. And for the sake of our health, we always said, well, we can't stay here too long, but we didn't have money. I was a student, and whenever I worked, it was part-time. My mother wasn't working at that time, and I think finally my father started getting retirement money, so that became our source of income. You may think that, okay, now you have income, it's easier, but no, it was still very, very hard. And even in this video, I just know for certain, I can't get into everything. That whole 10 years we were there, it has just been, the whole 10 years has been just like something very, very stressful for us in many ways. And I think I'm going to make maybe a video talking about that if you're interested. There are more than one occasion that he tried to, remove us. More than one occasion that the landlord tried to sell the house without even telling us, try to kick us out without even telling us. Or, last minute he would say, yeah, there's a buyer coming, you all have to leave. So, even after my father passed away, which was in February 3rd, 2019, something I really didn't share with, I didn't share with people except for people very close with me. But, they waited a little while, and then the moment he passed, they were like pressing us. Oh, get out. Why are you still here? We want to sell the place. They wanted to have a banker come in. It's, it was really, really stressful for us in more ways than one, honestly. So going back to December, the landlord just suddenly told us that, we sold the place, right? We sold the place. There was a buyer, and mom told my sister and I, we were just like, what? Like, it was sudden. Like, we know that he was trying to sell it for quite some time, but, just at the prospect that it was already sold, what he told us, that was something that really shocked us. And during that time, I had some of my series on Instagram, YouTube. Many of the things I was up to, I had to pause it. And just the fact that, we had to now leave the place, it presented a whole list of challenges for us. So for myself personally, at that time I wasn't working, because if you saw the other video, I was talking about work. I was furloughed and wasn't returned back to my previous job. So that was one issue. But then after my father passed away, the government did grant us that my mother receive his pension, which is not that much, but nevertheless, we're very grateful for that. But that was basically our only source of income, the pension. I wasn't working, my sister wasn't working, none of us was working. We knew that the challenge was, can we even afford to move out right now? So here's the catch. When he told us that he sold the place, basically he also said we have 30 days to leave. We have to leave by the end of the month. Between finding a place and just trying to figure out what we were going to do and pack and everything, it just really got stressful. We started losing a lot of sleep. I was like falling away from a lot of things, started to speak to people less. Honestly, it's not something I really told a lot of people. It's something that I think we all really suffered in silence, right? And some people said, hey, because I've told just a few people about it. Just told a few select people about it. And some of my friends would say, why don't you stay with family? Well, guess what? That person is basically part of the family, and look how family is treating us, right? So we didn't want to put ourselves in that situation, and we just said no, right? Then another suggestion I got was, why not look for affordable housing or public housing, for example? And that's the thing, we've been on the list for public housing for a long time, and I'm going to get into that in just a second. But we've been on that list for a long time and we haven't heard from them. And same thing with affordable housing. With 30 days, we didn't really have time to wait that long, right? That could take 2 months, 3 months, or even longer. We had a really, really limited number of options. But I was really grateful that the way some of my friends responded. One person just immediately looked up a place and said, here, this apartment was for my stepdad. It was a studio apartment. He was going to rent it out, but he's like, you guys sign up for it instead. And we looked at it, and because it's 3 of us, it wasn't something that we could do, but it was $1,400, which was pretty good. But nevertheless, it was a little bit too small for us. And what happened was that this was basically a recurring thing that happened where I would speak to just a few people saying, hey, this is our situation because it was an emergency. Do you know anything? And even ourselves, we started looking online, Zillow, Street Easy, you name it. We started looking for apartments. And the thing is that many of them, unfortunately, they said you have to make 40 times the rent, which I get it. It's important to make sure that the tenants are able to not only pay the rent, but they're not struggling. I think that's the terminology that they use. And for that reason, you have to make a certain amount over the rent. So many places were turning us away, saying, sorry, you're not 40 times the rent. Once I said the total, how much we're making based off of the retirement that my mother is getting from my father, they said no. They said, sorry, we can't take you. You're not, we can't even help you, right? And I remember one person called me saying, what? Like you're wasting our time, basically. And it was really stressful because the day was approaching. Weeks and weeks have passed, and the time was approaching, and we were getting more stressed out and desperate, honestly. And here is the first glimmer of hope. And I'm not going to give any of you foresight. I'm just going to explain what happened, and you're going to see later on why this is important. So now we're going to December 21st. I cannot forget this date. So at this point, I'm just so desperate. Nothing we're trying is working. And, at the same time, I'm applying for jobs, right? And I'm hoping I could get an interview right away, but I'm going to get more into the jobs thing a little bit after. So I'm part of this Bible study class called AFCO, and we meet every single week, Monday to be specific. So I'm just saying, I need someone to pray for me, someone who's like very godly and believes, to just pray for my family and I. So I said, you know something? When I go to the next AFCO meeting on Zoom, it's a large class, like 80 people or something. I said, I'm going to mention what I'm going through and ask them to pray for me, right? And the class ended up being canceled that day, right? So December 21st. And now, because it was canceled, something inside me said, well, Daniel, it's canceled. Why not just reach out to organizations asking them to pray for you, right? So that's what I ended up doing. So I reached out to many organizations from 3ABN, Amazing Facts, many organizations. I reached out to them, and honestly, at that time, I just genuinely felt if someone could just pray for my family and I feel like we're going to make it through this. That was honestly my belief. We will make it through this if somebody cares enough to do that. And we got some replies. Not everyone replied, but we got some replies saying, yeah, we're going to pray for you. We'll pray for you. And honestly, that pressure started to lift from me, right? And now, but then something happened. And I'm going to have to be very, I can't disclose their names out of respect for that organization. They told me to not to disclose that information. But to God be the glory. I'm just so thankful for what happened. And this was unexpected. So now one person and her husband said, okay, we'll pray for you, right? They responded. But then they passed on a message to this other church. And they spoke to that church and told us about our situation, right? And now the treasurer from that church reached out to us, well, me specifically, and said that so-and-so told us about your situation. And and this is what the person told me, the person was saying, when she was explaining it to us, the Holy Spirit impressed on us saying, this family is different. You have to help this family, right? So this is the treasurer for that church, and normally they allocate their money to help their members. And trust me, this church is not even in New York State. It's in a whole different state. It's across somewhere, you know? And the fact that this person reached out to me and said, listen, the Holy Spirit has impressed us to help you. We want to give you some money so you can, when you find a place, you can pay first month's rent. And I'm telling you, I was just crying myself. And then when I showed my mother, my sister wasn't home at that time, right? And I'm just blown away. I'm just crying, and I'm like, what? You know, and I showed my mom, she started crying too. Because yes, you know, the whole thing with the retirement fund, but we actually did not have any money. You know, we didn't have any money. So to us, this was a sign, Lord, you're with us and you'll help us out this situation. So that was the first amazing thing. There's a lot of amazing things that happened. And they were more than happy to send us the money, and then they specify a large amount, and we said, yeah, no, that's more than enough. And they sent it to us, and they mailed it to us actually. And it's interesting, I got it pretty quickly. And so I just wanted to reiterate, like, to us, that was just telling us, okay, we're going to make out this situation. And we just said, to God be the glory, and we really appreciate it. I told the treasurer, please, I'll take it on one condition: we have to pay you back. And you know what her response was? Her response was, listen, we don't want the money back, but this is what we want you to do. We want you to pay it by showing someone else who's in need the same kindness. That's all they wanted. I said, praise the Lord. Wow. And that was something. Honestly, that was truly something, and that was the first turning point. But although that was such a good thing, things actually did get a little bit harder after that. So we're just, here thinking, okay, we have enough money to pay the first month's rent. And I'm applying for work, right? I'm applying for jobs. And what my angle now was, I was applying for these houses and I was saying, listen, I'm going to get a job soon, It's me basically saying, please trust me, I'll get the job soon. We could pay the first month's rent. This happened at some point between December 24th and December 27th, I should say. So we're packing some things up, and I asked my mother about the affordable housing, or well, I should say public housing application. And she said, well, she doesn't know where the paperwork is, her paperwork for the housing application. But right then when we were talking about it, she finds it, right? Literally about 40 something seconds later. And so she calls them, and what was crazy was that we weren't even on hold. They literally picked up right away, and then they said, hello, what's going on? And she explained how she's been waiting for nearly a year. And they said, what? You haven't gotten a letter for an interview yet? We'll send you the letter right away, right? So the person saying this made us think, wow, we're going to get an interview, and we're going to get an apartment. And we were so excited, and we were like, wow, yes, awesome. This is amazing. So, as a result, because the days kept advances, we try to, continue packing. And now what we're worried about is that the thing is that with the interview process for public housing, that is something that normally takes, let's say a few weeks. It could take even over a month. So we're thinking we have to leave by the 31st. We don't have a month. So we're wondering, maybe we could do a temporary solution. So actually a few weeks prior, a few ideas came into my head. For example, what if we do stay with someone, right? Like a friend. So I was thinking, what if I stay with a friend and my mother and sister stay with someone on my mother's side of the family? So I was thinking about splitting up, but then there was a feeling deep inside me that tried to say, Daniel, that's not a good idea. That's not a good idea. But at this point, we were so desperate that I wanted to really force the hand, and I really wanted to say, this is what we're going to do. And I said it to my mom, I said it to my sister, and so I said, this is our plan. This is what we're going to do. So I reached out to a friend. He knows who he is, and God bless his soul. He was more than happy to take me in. And I had my mother and sister reach out. She was reaching out to some of her sisters. She has about 3 sisters, I believe. I forget sometimes. So she was reaching out, and my friend was like, yeah, you could stay as long as you want. And his mother was actually okay with it as well. Me not wanting to intrude or impede on them too long, I literally said to them, okay, I'll only stay, let's say at most mid-February. It was sometime around there, the end of January going to February. I thought by then the interview will surely come in. By then I'll get a job and everything will be fine and dandy. But now what happened was that my sister, not my sister, but my aunt said to my mother, no, you can't stay with us. She said how she has had times in her life where people took advantage of her. Not that she's saying my mom would, she wasn't implying that, but she said that can ruin relationships, So she said no to them. And so my mom contacted her other sisters. She contacted them, and it was a similar answer, except one person said, well, her daughter just moved in because of COVID, so she has no more space. So now my mother and sister had nowhere to go. There's no way I can just leave and go stay at a friend's place, but my mother and sister, they have no place to go. So I said, well, I'm not going anywhere. If you're not going anywhere, I'm not going anywhere. So my aunt saying no to my mother and sister, that told me that, no, we have to stick together. And even both of them, ironically, Because when I was mentioning the plan about splitting up, even both of them, they said it will be better to be with your family in this situation. So that happened. So now we're just hoping and praying, because it's like the holidays, that they won't come over. And December 31st came, and we're like, they're gonna cut off the electricity, all this stuff. We were just really, really worried, and we were thinking the water is gonna be cut off, all this stuff. So now here comes January. We're still there in the apartment. So we figured they didn't just come. He didn't come because of New Year's or whatever, right? But what's interesting is that we found out that literally one of the reasons why ourselves, or by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this, but when the landlord sold the place, right, and said everyone has 30 days to leave, he said everyone, not just us, on every family on all levels had to leave the house. And the reason he was saying that was that the person who purchased the house now wants everyone out. So he said he was kicking everyone out regardless of whether they could pay or not. So we were just like questioning, wait a minute, why didn't he, come and have someone come and throw us out? So at this time, unfortunately, we didn't know our rights, right? We didn't even know that there were laws that were in effect actually protecting tenants, preventing them from being kicked out at that very moment. And we were just like, what? Are you kidding me? So the laws were going all the way to January 31st, the end of that month. And when the landlord showed up again, he was like, okay, you guys know you guys are going to have to leave, right, by the end of this month, et cetera, et cetera. He was saying that. And I don't know, we started to notice something was a little bit suspicious. And suspicious in the sense that, didn't he say we had 30 days? And now he's saying at the end of this month? Something tells me, and something, our neighbors, although they got the news, they weren't panicking. They knew they had time. So he purposely, although he knew what was going on, he didn't share that information with us, right? He didn't share with us that, hey, you do have time to actually get yourself together and move. He didn't tell us any of that. So I thought that was very low, and that was very disappointing, and that was very sneaky on his part. So during this time, I'm also finally getting some interviews for work, and it's really sad. So I found this place, actually. It was paying like $55K a year, right? And I went for the interview, and literally that person just never showed up. I'm so serious. The person never showed up. And then I remember I called, I was like, hey, I have an interview for this time. And I came early, and it was on Google Hangouts, by the way. So I came early, I was on time, I was dressed up, top half was dressed up. But when I ended up calling, they said that, it was a mix up. They confused me with someone else. And they were like, well, yeah, send us an email and we'll reschedule. I emailed them, no reply. Next day, no reply. So then I ended up calling them again, and they're so unorganized. And this guy was just like, oh yeah, right, okay, we're going to have an interview Thursday morning, right? By phone this time, right? I'm gonna give you a call right then and there. So I waited, Thursday morning came, he never called me. So I took that as a sign as this job is not meant for me. And something, I'll be honest, when I got that interview, I was saying to myself that if I get this job could be the difference between us getting approved for apartments versus, being stuck in the situation where we are in currently. I was stressed out because, it's on me. I felt like all of that was on me. And the fact that that job interview failed, that really made me feel discouraged. And I will say this, I felt like the Lord just knew that I'm going to be honest, and I'm ashamed to say it, at that time, I don't think I was trusting God anymore. Although what he did with the fund from that church was incredible, everything so far, I put my trust in me having a job and I'll pay, right? And of course, you need a job to pay rent. I'm not saying you don't. But the idea was that that's where all my confidence was, right? And I just got shown in that moment that even a job interview isn't guaranteed. And that was just something that really struck me, because I just heard about a lot of people who just lost their job suddenly and they just couldn't afford their houses anymore. And you know, like, it could happen at any time. Even some people, it happened later in the pandemic. So I think from myself personally, I was just really struck by that, and I was just wondering, then what can I do? So me getting rejected from those jobs led me to applying for a recruiter firm called 1+1, which at first I wasn't so sure if it would work out. I just saw the pay, I saw the job description, and it really resonated with me, especially that they do residential architecture as a main focus. Of course, they do high end, some mixed use here and there, but it resonated with me so much that I really, really wanted to apply. And so I ended up applying, and they downloaded my resume from LinkedIn, and then they had a phone call with me as a screening. And then I remember one day I had 2 job interviews in the same day. The first one was a little bit like, I went to their office. It was a little bit awkward, not gonna lie. Definitely, I feel like I was sitting there nodding like this is not the place for me, and I think they were sitting there nodding like, yeah, we need someone a little bit older with 10 years of experience. They wanted someone to manage this whole thing on site and like by themselves, no like other project manager. And I was just like, okay, you know, so we were just sitting there like that. And it's funny, for the second part of my interview, I had an interview right after. So I ran down to the lobby, I sat down, and this is with the recruiters, 1+1. I sat down and I got on Zoom, and I was like, oh, hey, like that. I was like, oh, hey. So that was very, very interesting. So that process is happening in the background. So I'm finally making some leeway with work, but otherwise things are not necessarily going too smoothly in terms of finding places, because although so with the recruiters, literally this was like a 5 to 6 part interview, which lasted over a month. I'm not kidding you. Although I felt confident by the grace of God I would get that job eventually, during that time I still didn't have the job, right? So we were applying to places still, and the end of the month was rapidly approaching. So we were applying to places, and still we were getting turned down, because although I said, well, I'm close to getting this job, that wasn't enough for them, which I understand. Like, you know, you're renting out the place and someone said, oh, yeah, I'll have the job soon. Like, you know, I completely understand. And he's threatening us. The landlord started threatening us. And this part was just like so hard on me, honestly, even. And I just can't forget it, because I know that my mother suffered a lot. So I'm going to share with you all a message, and of course I'm going to blur everything out. I have this message cropped so that it's not revealing too much. So my mother, at this point, he kept pressing us, saying, okay, where are you going? You found a place, you found a place, you found a place. Where are you going? Where are you going? He was like pressing us and pressing us. And my mother, she was so stressed out that sometimes she wouldn't even reply to the messages. So eventually she decided to reply, and honestly, she said, look, we're doing it by faith. Everything we're doing by faith. Even the fact that we were packing the rest of our things, and we were saying we're doing it by faith because we don't know where we're going to go, right? So here's the message. So she said, hi, blank. How are you doing, blank? We're parking, and she misspelled packing by accident. She said parking. We're parking by faith, she wrote, but I can't tell you when, only God knows. Like, she's like, when are you gonna get out? That's basically what he was saying in the message before. And he said, hi, the name of my mom. What progressive steps have you made to park by faith? Please let me know. You see the sarcasm there. That made me so angry. you know, that response was very discouraging, but I'm actually glad that I told her to answer, because by answering, that's when I mean, we already saw it before, but that's when you really begin to see the arrogance. You really begin to let his character come to the surface. And that's just one of many, many, many messages, you know, that he sent to us. We were so desperate at that time that we started looking for shelters. He was saying basically like the place better be empty. Better be empty. Like, I don't care. It better be empty. And at that time, we started looking for homeless shelters. You know something? It's crazy because back in December, a friend of mine said, hey, you know, do you know there are homeless shelters you guys could go to in the meantime. But I was like, nah, I have faith. We're not going to end up in a homeless shelter. And I don't know. I was saying that. I was like, come on, don't even say that. That really discourages me that you even sent that to me. And I know she meant well. She meant very well. And I'm very, very, very grateful for her as well. And she knows. But at that time, it was just the idea, because I wasn't looking down at anyone in a homeless shelter. The idea was that there are people who, unfortunately, they end up in that situation. There's nothing they can do, right? And I wanted to try every one of our options first. But by this point, I was saying, what more can we do? That's when I called DHS. And unfortunately, they were very unhelpful. I mean, I understand it with the COVID crisis. There's many people, like they're filled up, right? So it's difficult. But also, the thing is, they were, I think, more so in terms of giving emergency housing. I was saying, listen, we have a few days left, right? We don't have time. Please, can you do something for us? And they told me basically after, by the way, I was on hold all day. This was a Friday, by the way. I was on hold all day. And basically it took several hours and to finally reach them. And then they directed me to this person. And then they redirected me to that person. And it was just like this whole game of telephone. And by the time I finally spoke to someone, they said, well, sorry, we don't have control over emergency housing. You're going to have to talk to NYCHA. And NYCHA is also involved with public housing, right? So really, if you don't know what NYCHA is looking at the New York City Housing Authority. That's what it stands for, in case you're not from New York City or if you're upstate. So that's what that stands for. We have an application with them, so we're on hold for like 10,000 years, and then when we finally get a hold of one of them, and we had to speak to several different people, that person's supervisor, the supervisor's supervisor, and you know, then they just told us, oh, you know, sorry, we can't do anything for you, And remember how I mentioned about that application that we sent, you know, in December? They said, we'll send you an application for the interview. Guess what? So I was asking, hey, you know, can we speed up the interview process? You know, my family and I we're close to being on the streets. Can you please do something for us? Please, please, please. We can't do anything else, right? And they said, well, you know, sorry, we can't. You know, we can't help you. There were people, they said they give priority to people in domestic violence situations, which is fine. And then there are other people. And there is a waiting list of 200,000 people. And my mother, all this time, you know, especially at her age, and, you know, her health is not too good. Really, all her confidence was, you know, we don't worry, we're going to be delivered from this place. You know, we're going to be placed in the housing, right? We're going to get the housing. We're going to be free from this place, right? It's funny. We started, I remember when I was born, we were in the 6th floor fancy apartment many years ago. And then eventually we ended up in a 2-story house where we were on the 2nd floor. Then eventually we ended up living in the place where we're on the first floor in this 2-story house, and then we ended up in the basement. So you see how we were like high up and we kept going lower and lower and lower and lower. And there's something very metaphorical about it, you know. And the idea is that we believe that God was going to take us out of the ground. It's like we started up high and we got buried, and he's going to take us out. And we've been there for 10 years, right? We've been there for 10 years. All her faith was in that. And just for me to tell her that, it crushed her. And we're saying, what we're going to do? There's no shelters that's going to take us, nothing. And you know something? I decided to ask, I was like, something told me, Daniel asked this question. I said, in December, someone said they're going to send us an interview. Can you check like all mail-in records, all transactions? So they have all those transactions documented on their database. And they looked and they said, no one has ever sent anything. The last transaction was literally in 2019. So that was like another blow that I had to really, when I said that to my mother, that was just another blow to her. The person on the phone really felt like they felt so bad. He had a heart, and he said, well, listen, I'm going to give you some resources you can call and see if they can help you, right? And I called several agencies. One agency is called Mayor's House of Tenant Protection. I believe that's what it's called. And Mayor's Office of Tenant Protection, yes. And I left a voice message, and these other housing attorney. So I called them, left voice messages, and that was that. So we were just scared because it was Friday, the 29th, as I said. January 29th, and so that means all the offices are going to be closed during the weekend. Monday is February 1st. So we're thinking we're going to get kicked out, right? And literally, it's a miracle by God. I know you all remember that snowstorm that started January 29th and lasted to February, I think like February 1st was even additional snow. So the landlord usually comes on the first of the month or the first week of the month. So as a result of the snowstorm, he lives in Jersey, by the way. So the landlord doesn't live in the private house. He lives in Jersey. So he wasn't able to come at all. The first week at all, he wasn't able to come. And this was such a blessing for us. And it's hard to really communicate how much it was a blessing, because a couple of things we didn't know was when the landlord was really bullying us, using all these scare tactics to try to get us out. What happened was that, you know, we had no idea what our rights were again, you know? We're wondering once again, why wasn't anyone upstairs panicking? He was aware of these laws, right? These laws that were in effect, and he didn't tell us about it at all, right? And the thing is, when Biden became president, he actually extended the whole, you're not going to be able to get evicted from your apartment till like, I think it was the first week of March. He extended all of that. And we're just like, what? Like that was really something, right? That was something that we were completely unaware of. And, you know, for us, on our part, when we found that out, we were like, well, he knew about it. He had to have known about it. Why didn't he tell us that? You know? That day we went to the housing court. We were filling out some paperwork. We were even trying to fill out a hardship declaration, right? And if you don't know about the hardship declaration, it basically prevents tenants from getting removed until I believe it's May. But then also at the same time, before I went to fill out the hardship declaration, the way I even found out about our rights was someone from the mayor's office of tenant protection contacted me at 8 a.m. Very nice and respectful guy. And he was, I explained the situation to him, and he was just saying, well, listen, first of all, you guys aren't going anywhere. He's like, what are you guys thinking? You guys aren't going anywhere. You can't go anywhere because all tenants, regardless of whether you could pay or not, has their protection extended all the way till I believe March 1st or March 3rd, sometime in the first week of March it was. And he told us that, and that's when we were like, what? And I'm on the phone with this guy talking for like some time, and really great brother, honestly. And he was just telling me that, listen, everything he used is considered harassment, is intimidation tactics, and the term that they have for it is self-eviction. He wanted to get us to self-evict ourselves before the actual appointed time to actually move out. And we're just like, what are you kidding me? Wow. And we're just like blown away, and we were just so very upset at this, because honestly, for us, we were suffering so much during this time because of the anxiety. It wasn't just the fact that we had to move. We weren't sleeping. And a lot of people didn't know I was dealing with this. You know, I started this Black History Month series. I was working on all these other things, and I was very inconsistent because I was dealing with that stress. And also in the background, I was going through that interview process, which lasted like an eternity or something. And, you know, for us, it wasn't really good for our health, right? I find it harder to sleep at night, you know, and I don't sleep as long. I sleep for less period of time. My sister started having nightmares. So it really had a mental toll on us that he wanted to do almost anything to kick us out. What's interesting is that at a certain point during that day, another housing attorney actually gave us a call. I'm talking to her on the phone, and she's a housing lawyer, and she's telling me the same thing, intimidation tactics. And she was also saying, yeah, you guys aren't going anywhere. But I told her we've been living at the place for 10 years. And this is what I found out, and maybe many of you don't even know this. When you live in a certain place for a certain period of time, when a landlord wants to kick you out, it is actually proportional to the amount of time you live there. So if you've been there for like a year, they can give you a 30-day notice, right? But if you've been there for like 5 years, it has to be like 6 months, right? We don't know what the condition is for 10 years, but you know, time is needed, especially in this pandemic. And she said, you know, I can check to see if the house has been sold, all transactions that the landlord has done. And I was like, you can do that? Apparently they can do that. So she went into the database, did her thing. A few minutes later, she said, well, it looks like he hasn't even sold the house yet, right? And the thing is, what blew my mind, and this is one detail that I forgot to say. I was wondering that why is he still coming, collecting rent, you know, coming to the house if he already sold it? He handed off the keys, according to him. The thing is, he said when he finally contacted us in February, oh, the realtor is coming with potential buyers. Going back to that phone conversation, she said, well, maybe he just said that just to get you all to, you know, react and to feel scared. And that was very messed up. There was no love, no respect in that. During that time, my family and I, we started like praying more, coming together, worship more. So, you know, just like praying to the Lord, please help us from this situation. You know, I've spoken to some friends and I told them, hey, be honest. How hopeful does our situation look? And they said, well, it looks hopeless because we didn't have any income, no income to afford anything, right? There was just a time where like my mom didn't check her credit score for a long time, right? Myself personally, and many people can attack me for this, I actually waited till after college to start building credit. I know, you're crazy, you know. I know with in college, you know, spending wise, everything is just like so reckless, and I waited till after college, and I'm actually building credit right now. So I waited for that, and so basically, just let's just say like no credit worthy of like getting us a place, right? So no income, no credit, right? Places were turning us down. I wasn't working at the moment, so that's 3. And when it comes to public housing, waiting list 200,000. Affordable housing, forget about it. those deadlines were for like April, etc. And you know, that's like another 2 months on top of that. So I asked some of my friends and they said the same thing. Yes, it's a hopeless situation. But then things started to turn around and improve by the grace of God for us. I finally started to get my unemployment, right? So there was this whole situation with my job when I was furloughed. I never applied for unemployment because they said, oh yeah, you'll get back to work soon, right? And they kept postponing it another month, another month, another month. I went into this in my video talking about job loss during the COVID-19. So you could see that if you want the full story on that. I had to wait 3 months for a new social security card. And you know what's actually crazy? I do have to say this, and I think everything is for a reason. So when I was initially getting unemployment the first time before it stopped, and I explained why it stopped in that video. So there was this whole mix up where I had to stop the unemployment. I called them and it took several months for me to actually start my unemployment again. Point is, if I continued getting unemployment from then up till now, my unemployment would have been finished. Probably the money would have been spent and then we would have been in this situation. But now I'm finally getting some money and I'm very grateful for that at that time. This was February 11th. I just cannot forget the date for many reasons, because it was like just a back-to-back miracle that happened that day. I'm driving, I went to this shop, I had to pick up something. I'm gonna have to just be a little bit vague with this part. But I went to pick up something, right? And I get a text from Marika. So the 1+1 has been really managing the communications between the firm and myself. And I did like maybe 4 interviews by this point already. And she's like, we have to talk about something. And it sounded so serious. So I said, probably don't have the job, which is fine. But I was in a good mood that day. So I just internalized it. Okay, I don't have the job. Lord, whatever you want, right? And I remember every interview I would just pray. I'll say, Lord, if this is the job for me, just put the words in my mouth, what I should say. And they said, guess what, Daniel? You got the job. And I was like, praise the Lord in my heart. And I was like, yes, I was in such a good mood. That was just like the best news. And the starting salary was pretty good. And that plus the retirement fund for what my mother was making, that was enough for us to start applying to other places. But I'm not done yet. So a couple other things happened that day. But also, so while I'm driving, I picked up a friend, and now I'm paying for parking. We're in the Manhattan, we're in the city. Right now, I'm just making sure, because I didn't have that much money. So I checked my bank account, right? I checked my bank account and I looked at all this money. I'm like, a couple of thousands. I'm like, where did this come from? Where did this come from? And I'm just like, what just happened, right? All those times I missed unemployment, they gave me all that money. By the way, when I started getting unemployment, they started giving me even more money. Yeah, there was like an extra 200, but like the initial amount was even more, and that was the correct amount I was supposed to be getting. And they gave me all this money at once. And I'm just like, what? That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. And it's a miracle too, because think about it. I got the job. Once you get the job, you can't start filing your claims anymore because you're going to start working. You can't file your claims. You have to say, I returned to work. You can't file your claims. But I got all of that money the same day, the same exact day that I got that job. So listen, call it what you want, but that was a miracle, because we also needed money to pay for those expenses. Pay for food. We were really low on food at home as well. And all this stuff, it was things that we were able to save, things we were able to accumulate. Because even though once I start working, it's just going to take time to build the money as well. It gets even better, but also doesn't get so better. It's like so and so. So in the meantime, what's happening now is that the landlord is bringing in people to the house, right? He's bringing in the realtors. The realtor is bringing in potential buyers to come look at the house. And here we are sitting in our home, at least my sister, my mother, and here's all these people coming in our house. He sent someone came during Sabbath, all this stuff, all these people come in our house. And, you know, I mean, I get it. You know, technically the realtor should ask our permission, but you guys already know the drill by now. So all these people were coming into our house and looking at it, looking in the rooms, and they were also taking pictures to put online. So there came a point where now I'm finally working by the grace of God, and we're also applying for places, of course, and now we have a new deadline. So you know, it kept getting pushed back, which we're very grateful that happened. This was more so towards the end of February, where the landlord calls my mother, and the landlord is talking to my mother, and I hear, like, I can't, because it wasn't on speaker, and I could hear, but even though it was not on speaker, I could hear him yelling at her, and she's getting stressed out, because she's like, listen, the Lord is going to lead us out. And we're like, what do you mean the Lord is going to lead you out? The Lord is not going to do anything for you. Or you guys are all this stuff or whatever. And he's like, you're trying to ruin my opportunity to sell the place. You guys are still here. And all these things he was saying. And I could hear that. And my sister and I, we were boiling with anger. We were so incredibly angry. And I'm not even saying the whole length of the conversation, because that's not the important point, but we were so angry, and my sister was pissed off, but like I was like, Lord, please give me the words to say, right? So I immediately felt calmer, and I texted him, right, this long message saying, listen, my mother has high blood pressure, you're stressing her out. And I said, listen, I'm in charge of looking for a place. You're going to talk to me from now on. Do not talk to her. You're not going to talk to her, right? And I said, this is what we're doing. This is the plan. This is how I'm looking, right? I said, well, Lord, you gave me this job. Now I'm also praying that the Lord leads me in this job, you know, help me to grow. Nothing is permanent. Jobs are not permanent. As before, when my confidence was, okay, if I get this job, I'm good. I said, no, I get this job, but Lord, I still need you to provide. We found some places, we started looking at some places, and some places said yeah, some places said no, and it was this whole back and forth thing, right? We didn't realize at the moment exactly what was going on. Many places that we asked to see, they wanted to see our bank accounts, they wanted to see our payment histories, saying, oh, did you pay this, did you pay that? But then there was a time where we just weren't paying rent, right? So it was very, very hard for us to actually prove that we've had over the last couple of months to show that we pay, you know, rent or whatever on time. So they wanted to see that as evidence, and we didn't have those things to provide. And they also were checking to see our balances between my bank account and my mother's bank account, and we weren't like so sure how to really reconcile any of that. Some places actually still ended up turning us away just because they felt like maybe we weren't going to be able to pay, or maybe the way we pay is just like so risky, unbalanced. But then every time we looked for a place, either there was always at least one person that didn't like something about the place. And we wanted something that we would all really enjoy, something that we'll all love. So we took it, every time there was one person that disagreed, we took it as a sign as that place is not meant for us. We only wanted to go, we didn't want to be presumptuous, because many times during this whole journey, and I left out so many details, unfortunately, but there were so many situations, things that we almost done that could have ultimately landed us to be homeless in the street immediately, or even much worse. You remember when I said that I told my friend, hey, I'll only stay for a month and I'll find an Airbnb. I was going to use the $2,000 that the church gave us to do that. But something in my heart said that the church gave it to us and they felt like the Holy Spirit impressed on them to give us that money. And they said, we want to give you the money for rent. So them saying that, I knew in my heart that that money cannot be used for anything else. It has to be used for rent, 100% used for rent. And I determined in my heart I wasn't going to use it for anything else. But at that time, that's what I'm saying. At that time, I almost used it to pay for Airbnb, pay for this, pay for that, pay for all this stuff. And in here, now we're in the middle of March at this point, and still we're living in the same place we were. We were almost so presumptuous, jumping the gun, trying to solve the situation ourselves, when ultimately we would have rushed ahead of what the Lord had reserved for us. So everything worked out. And now here is one of the biggest, it just blew our minds. It honestly blew our minds. So then now we find this place in Church Avenue, and we sent the application. This is the first apartment where all three of us, we really, really like it, right? We're just like, what? This is incredible, right? Then it came to the same point where this is where we lost out on a lot of application. Oh, show us your banking account. Oh, show us your credit score, right? And by this point, I got my mom's credit score for Credit Karma. And a lot of people, when I say, oh, I'm still building credit, they're just like, what are you talking about? You know, you have to have a credit score or something. So now at this point, they were asking, okay, why haven't you been paying rent recently? Why haven't you been doing that? And you know, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, under pressure, when I was asked those questions from some of the other people, I guess like realtors, I actually lied. And you know, that's a sin and that's not good. And look, I ended up not going to any of those places. But something in my heart, deep down in my heart, said, Daniel, whatever the Lord has reserved for you, no one can take that away. So I said, okay, you know, I told the truth. I said the whole situation, which is way too much for me to get into this video. But I said everything, and the realtor said, I'm pretty sure the landlord will be happy with each of you as tenants. And now here's the greatest realization for any of us. So remember the $2,000 that I actually ended up receiving from the church, which I said I purposed in my heart I would not touch. So this is gonna blow your mind. So it was 3:55 p.m. March 17th that I came to this realization. I literally had to record myself talking about this, right? So that money, right? Well, I'll say, so that money came into our accounts at the right time. And I have to say this. So my family and I were wondering, you know, Lord, if this was from you, you touched their hearts to have them send us that money. Why would you have them reach out to us at the end of December? They send us the money, the check. The check gets posted January, right? First week of January. And, you know, we're still here. You know, we haven't used the money for rent. We're still struggling to look for places. So now with this home, he asked for the last 3 banking statement from the last 3 months. So basically, he wants to see the banking statement from March, February, and January. Prior to January and December, remember, I wasn't getting any unemployment. I wasn't getting any funds whatsoever. So unfortunately, I had like a few hundreds in my bank account. If they were to see that in my banking statement, I would automatically disqualify, because each person signing the lease has to have a good standing. They want to see that each month you have enough money to actually even pay for the rent. So they want to see that in your account, not just that you have money in your account each month, but they want to see that your past 3 banking statements has more than enough money to cover what the rent is, right? So with the few hundreds that I had, plus the money that the church gave me, one of my accounts had over what was required for the rent, right? And that's what showed up in my banking account, my banking statement for for January, February, and March. So this was absolutely incredible. But here's the crazy part. So when I got the check, December, and I put it in my account, and it took some time to deposit. The check literally deposited and registered on my account right before the banking statement was calculated. So think about it this way. So if my banking statement was even 1 day later, it would not have shown the money as part of my banking statement. So January would have just been a few hundreds, then February has the hundreds plus that money, and March has that plus the money, right? But because it posted right on time, I had the money shown on my account for all 3 months, right? And then the other account that had the unemployment, I couldn't use it for all 3 of the months because I started getting it towards the end of February. So it didn't start really showing up in my banking statement until after that. So basically I only had 1 month that was really good in terms of standing where I could say, hey, I could have used that account. But this account where I took the money from the church and I put it in there, all 3 months, it was good. And without that, we would have been rejected from the place. So I had to say, praise the Lord. Oh man, it blew my mind. Who else could have calculated that? Who else could have said, Daniel, I'm going to give you this money ahead of time, even though you don't know why I gave it to you this early, so that now your account has a good record. The good record is what ultimately will allow you to get the place, and then you can use the money to get the place. I said, praise the Lord. Oh, we were just praying and praying. We just said, thank you, God, so much for that. Because there is not a person that could have thought of that or calculated that. All we knew is that that money was supposed to be used for rent. And we had no idea. We had no idea how. We had no idea when. All we knew is that, and that was just the right amount of money too, right? That's the right amount just so they could see that we had more than what that rent was, the total rent. For all 3 of those months, we had more than that. So we just said, thank God. And that was just such a huge miracle. And we were just so thankful. And the landlord accepted us for the place, and we signed the lease. My first time ever signing a lease on anything or any housing, not anything, but any housing. And then for us, it was just one of the greatest miracles ever, right? And we're just happy to finally be out and finally no longer be in that situation. So we went through a lot. We suffered a whole lot. And, I really see it. I really saw that the Lord understood that it was time to take us out of that place. It was time to take us out. So although it was a really bad situation, like the pressuring, all that stuff, we would dread every single month where the landlord and his wife would come over, because I would feel anxiety. The only reason they stopped coming so frequently was because of COVID. There was that lockdown. You couldn't travel from Jersey. And it's sad to say that was like a blessing for us. If someone was to tell me I was supposed to go through all of that and so many things I left out, all of that just to get to where we were, I would be, maybe my attitude would be different. Like, okay, we're going to make it, but I wouldn't want to go through it. I would say, no, that's stress. Lord knows why bad things happen. Sometimes bad things happen, and in the moment, we don't know why it happens, but it ends up being the best thing for us. And honestly, I wouldn't have had it any other way, and I'm very grateful for all that has happened. You know something? Despite everything that has happened, what we went through with the landlord in that situation, I forgive him. It's certainly not an easy thing to do or say, honestly, but it's really not worth it. Forgiveness doesn't mean that you allow the person to continue to walk all over you. Forgiveness does not mean that you accept that and you will just let it happen, you'll tolerate it. Forgiveness sometimes is really literally for yourself not to continue to bear that poison. Hating someone is a poison. It takes energy. When you don't hate anyone, you don't got beef with someone, it feels all that tension is gone. Forgiveness is a gift, honestly. And sometimes we do things where we're not worthy of forgiveness, but we are forgiven. And I just think of Christ, what he has done for us, that we may all be forgiven. Even though all the feelings that's involving what's happened, it may take time to heal, I'll say that I've forgiven him for this whole situation. So don't take this as this is just me attacking the landlord. This is me telling you that despite the odds, despite how bad the situation is, the Lord has come right on time to the rescue and pulled us out of that situation, turned our bad situation to something that is ultimately better for us. So even in your worst or darkest situation, there is hope. There is hope for you. And I just wanted to encourage each of you today and remind you of that hope. You're living, you're breathing. There's hope in just simply being alive and doing that. Not sure what you may be going through personally, but take it to the Lord. He'll help you out. And of course, reach out to friends, tell people, and seek help. Don't try to go through that yourself. I know at a certain point I just had to tell people, hey, can you help me look for a place, because it's not about pride, it's not about any of that, So I hope you were blessed and you enjoyed this video. To God be the glory. And I'm hoping to get back to my regular uploading schedule right after this and finally get the Voice for the Future project done at last. There's always something trying to delay me or something interrupting me. So once again, it's great to see you all once again, and I hope to catch you all in the next video.